I think we're going to get started. So again, thank you everybody for logging on tonight and welcome to our Parent Garden Night for the class of 2024, our sophomore class. And of course, if you do have your students sitting with you around the computer tonight, that's totally fine too. The program is geared more towards parent or guardian. It can be a lot of information to feel like you're getting at once. So it can maybe seem a little overwhelming to a student, but it's totally okay if they want to sit here. It's information that will also be delivered to them throughout the year from their counselor, but in a little bit more of a slower pace, not all kind of all in one night like this. So that's just some information about whether or not you want your student to be sitting with you. So I'll do some introductions to start us off. I'm Fallon Balassone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Director of School Counseling here at Columbia. And tonight with us, we have some very special guests. We have Principal Sanchez. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it with your interesting background. Okay, and then we have our two hosts for the evening, two of our amazing counselors. We have Mr. Williams, who's been a counselor with us here for a few years, and we have Mr. Gardner, who is the newest member of our family in CHS Counseling. So he just started with us this year, so we're happy to have him on board. And thank you both for being here tonight after a very long day. They were both back to back with senior college meetings all day, so if they're looking a little tired, although they don't, they look wonderful, but just so you know, I just thank them so much and appreciate so much all that they do. So thank you everyone for being here. Before we get started with our program at all, I think that Principal Sanchez has a special announcement for our sophomore families, right?
No, I don't have, no, I'm just kidding. I thank you, Ms. Balassone, so much for organizing these grade level sessions, some new programming that was brought in last year with Ms. Balassone, taking leadership role in the counseling department, and she's doing a phenomenal job, as are the counselors. So thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us. We are recording this session, correct, Ms. Balassone? Perfect. So there'll be a link as well if you want to refer to anything that is said later, and it'll be on a YouTube channel. And then also, as these two experts talk this evening, Ms. Balassone and I will be on the chat trying to answer some questions. The one thing I know that there were already a couple of questions was about our tradition of having sophomores take the PSAT. At this point, it's just too much, or there's too many students to be able to take the PSAT at once to do it effectively, especially with COVID numbers, trying to keep the numbers down to have it with the juniors. So what I decided to do was actually to have the sophomores take the PSAT later in the year. So sophomores will be able to take the PSAT. We're going to be looking at the spring dates. So that will be late winter, early spring. So we're looking at March and April. It's the PSAT 10. Juniors will be taking the PSAT, as we've always done, in October. And that will allow students, to, once they're juniors, to enter the National Merit Scholarship process. But again, it does make a lot of sense for our sophomores to take the test. But of course, I think later in the year. So it's a lot less stressful with all the other assessments that are happening in October. So
Thank you so much for making that happen, to you and the whole administrative team who will be working on that. We thank you so much and are so happy the sophomores will be able to get that. So hooray, fun
I thought it
news.
was the counseling team that was good. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. All right. So that was, I think, a great start to tonight. What could have been better than that? So before I turn it over to Mr. Williams and Mr. Gardner, I just want to share some important messages from some of our partner organizations who normally would come in person to our grade level, evenings like this. But of course, here we are virtually. So they just asked me to share the information. So first I want to talk a little bit about Cougar Cares. Hopefully you already know who they are. They do amazing things for our students at Columbia High School. They will help any student in need at all, but they make sure that all of our seniors get to all the senior events, which can be pretty pricey. So they'll cover that for them. They'll make sure they get to prom, graduation, get a yearbook, all that kind of stuff. They make sure that students in need of groceries will get grocery deliveries. If they have extra money left over from all this at the end of the year. They'll ask us counselors if we know of any, graduates who might need help paying for textbooks. They're really amazing. So we highly recommend that you check them out on their website. There'll be a link right there. You can see it there as well. And hopefully that you can donate to them, because their donations, of course, are how they're able to do this great work in our community. So that's Cougar Cares. Please check them out. We also are big fans of the Columbia HSA. Definitely get on their website and make sure you sign up for their weekly e-blasts so that you know what's going on with the high school. They kind of collect all the information that comes from all the different people into one email. So it's really helpful to be able to get that each week. And they also do a lot of amazing events for the faculty, staff, and students at the high school. So please also make sure that you join the HSA and sign up for those e-blasts. Our librarians asked that we share some information about the CHS library. One of the most important things to note is that students can go to our librarians to have their PowerSchool login reset and for Gmail help and stuff like that. Parents, not so much. Parents have to email this email address right here, this parent portal help email. It's also on the website, in order to get their PowerSchool login information reset or to have anything about their information in PowerSchool be changed. So just keep that in mind. The librarians are for the students, and this parent portal help account is for the parents. So they just wanted me to share some of this information about what they're able to offer up there, their hours. They stay open late, which is pretty cool. So it's a nice spot to be able to stay if you need to do some work after school. And then just a little plug for our counseling department's new website. Hopefully everyone has checked it out. It's just the counseling link off of the CHS web page. We spent a lot of time building this out. There's a lot of really good information on here. All the information about how to contact your counselors on here. We have a calendar of events on the homepage with links to anything virtual and information about how to sign up for the students for anything in person. We post important announcements on here. So I thank everybody for checking it out. It's a wealth of information and it's constantly updated. So make sure you're checking that homepage regularly. And now it's time to start our program. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Williams and Mr. Gardner. Thank you.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to start us off. Again, to reiterate, I'm very glad to be here as a part of Columbia. My first, I guess, 6 weeks now have been whirlwind, but it's been a great experience. And your sophomores are in a very different position than a lot of others because many of them are almost like freshmen and being in the building for the first time. So this survival kit at CHS is key. These are going to be all of their important resources that they will need. Canvas obviously is for all of their classes, for their assignments, how they're going to get all information from their teachers. So if there are ever any issues with that, make sure that's handled right away. For PowerSchool, like Ms. Balasone said, that resource is the library, as well as the parent portal help for any of you that need assistance. And again, another great plug, the CHS website is amazing. Ms. Balasone did an unbelievable job putting that together. Become familiar with that. There are so many resources on there, as well as our counseling supports that we'll talk about a little bit. Both academic and social emotional are on there. So if there's ever any assistance that you or your student needs, that is key to know that website, be familiar with it. SCOIR, many of you know, is the college application website that we use, as well as a site that you can use for some career exploration, which we'll touch on a little bit later on. Very important to know, become familiar with, so that by the time you're a senior and you're doing your senior meetings and your application process, you know that website and that resource like the back of your hand. Remind is a great resource that the counselors use to get in touch with students on a daily basis. It's basically like sending a text message without obviously using anyone's telephone number. So for quick answers that either we might need or your student might need, that's a really great resource to reach us on a daily basis. And then emails are huge. I can't tell you how many students, you send an email to and 4 days later they say, oh, I don't want to check my student email. So one, check your email in PowerSchool so that we can reach out, as well as make sure that your students are checking their emails on a regular basis. It should be daily at the very least. Okay, next slide. So what do we do as counselors? As you can see, it's a pretty lengthy list. We deliver that core curriculum in events like this. as well as different lessons that we can do both in and out of the classroom. Student planning is obviously a key piece, whether that's academic advising, working on schedules like we are right now in one of our schedule window periods where there's some add drops going on, some changing of classes, college and career counseling, right? We're doing that with the seniors right now, doing all of our senior meetings, and then monitoring graduation progress. Throughout the 4 years, we will monitor credits, which classes you need to graduate, are you on track to graduate, to make sure that everything goes smooth during their 4 years. Responsive services that may be needed, whether that's crisis response in the classroom, in the school, or something that might even happen at home that we can help with. Small group and individual counseling as well, in coordination with us and our student assistant counselors. Some of those indirect services that we refer to, child study team, INRS, if there are students that are struggling, coordinating the 504 process with the assistant principals. Again, that crisis response, any home instruction for students that have anything that goes on where they're not able to come to school. And then collaborating with you as parents, with teachers, with administrators, on how to get the best out of our students and how to help those that are in need of help. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, advocating for your students. That's something we do on a daily basis in a multitude of areas, and something that we enjoy doing. Next slide, please. So what are those academic and social emotional resources for your student? Number one is us. I always tell my students every time they're in my office, please pop in. If there's anything that's going on that you need to talk about, my door is always open. The counseling annex, those supports that I talked about for our website, there is a Google form on there where you can fill out for your student. We can fill out for your student. A teacher can fill it out. If they see that a student is struggling, in their class, there's Achieve and Slam tutoring available. There's workshops all throughout the week in the counseling annex on pretty much anything you can think of, on executive functioning, time management, organizational skills. There's an NCAA student athlete workshop for students that are looking to continue their sport at the next level. There's groups that happen, and there's also counseling interns in the counseling annex for anybody that would like one-on-one issues to deal with them. Obviously, the conference period, 9th period during the day, for those that don't have a PE class, then that is the #1 time where you can be reaching out to your teachers, coming to your school counselor for whatever you might need. Our SAC is always available. Ms. Martinez is not in right now, so Mr. Lupus is covering for the building, but they're obviously a great resource. And then finally, we have the Loft, which is a great resource for students. They can pop in anytime throughout the day. I know there's always a ton of them down there in lunch with a safe space to eat, hang out, and kind of relax. And that's available daily and after school for later hours as well. Next slide. Clubs and activities. For many of our sophomores, this is kind of really the first time they can participate in these clubs and activities on an extensive basis now that we are back in the building. So our #1 recommendation is get involved, right? Join one of the many clubs that are available, and there's across all interest levels and all genres. There is a club for almost everybody there. And if there's not one there for you, you can create one. There's a process that goes along with it, but if there's something you're interested in, they can always create it. That's on our activities page with contacts for the directors of those clubs as well. And that's something that colleges look at. They want to see that you're involved in things other than just academics, across a wide range of different areas. And one of the things I tell my seniors when I meet with them is, colleges have kind of caught on. They don't want somebody that's in 25 clubs, but they want to see people that are involved and passionate about the clubs that they're in and are integral members of those clubs and activities. Next slide. YouScience is a great resource within SCOIR, especially as a sophomore, as you start to kind of learn a little bit more about what you're interested in. This is where you can complete these career assessments that will show you, based on how you answer questions, how you complete certain puzzles, what careers might fit your interests and your personality type. So it's a great resource, and it doesn't mean those are careers you have to go after, but it can kind of steer your student in the right direction and maybe help them if they're kind of unsure of exactly what they want to do at this point, which as sophomores is probably a lot of them. Next slide. So post-high school options, right? Sophomores, we're thinking about, planning for, after graduation. Obviously we have the 4-year college option, 2-year college option. It might be work after high school. It might be the military. Trade school opportunities. There's a lot of value in trade schools now, a lot of job opportunities in those fields, whether that's a post-grad year or a gap year. We will help our students in any one of those areas, whatever their plan might be. Instead of just saying, okay, great, you're going to go to the military, we'll have options as well as help guide them through that process. So it's not just about, if it's college, great, but we have a lot of other resources and a lot of other avenues for all of our students to take advantage of. And I think now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Williams. So thank you all again, and he's going to bring us home.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Thank you, Ms. Balso, Mr. Sanchez. So one of the things that Mr. Gardner mentioned was that a big responsibility for us as counselors is planning ahead, making sure your child gets to graduation, and making sure they know exactly what they need in order to make it to the finish line, right? So right here are the graduation requirements. For English, the state requires 4 years of English, 4 years of PE and health. Every other subject, it requires three years. So math, science, social studies. Now, it's only required 1 year of a world language to graduate. And then we have 1 year of a visual and performing arts, 1 year of a 21st century life and careers, and a half year of a financial literacy. So that is the state graduation requirements, and that's what we go by in order for students to graduate. Colleges, most colleges expect a little bit more, right? So for instance, the vast majority of colleges, they're looking for 2 years of a world language. What they really say is, we want you to continue in all 4 of your core subjects. And if you're not continuing in all 4 of your core subjects, there should be a reason, such as you're very strong at math and you took an extra math instead of a social studies, or vice versa, right? So it's important to pay attention and plan ahead and make sure you're understanding, exactly what you need to graduate. As counselors, we will double check and triple check and quadruple check this all the time, and we'll keep track of it. But it's important for you guys to understand it as well. So that way, if your son or daughter wants to make a change to your schedule, you kind of understand, oh no, he or she actually needs this class. Next slide. So most students, they are enrolled in 35 credits a year. That would be a full periods 1 through 8. Every year you need 30 credits to advance to the next year. So your freshman year, you need to accumulate 30 credits to be considered a sophomore. To be considered a junior, you need to have 60 credits, and to be considered a senior, you need to have 90 credits. If the student passes every single class, there should be no reason why they don't advance in grade, right? Now, if there's a class that's dropped, that obviously puts them at less than 35 credits, and that's how we can kind of come into grade issues, right? Also, if a class has failed, that could be another reason why your child doesn't have the correct amount of credits. Now, in terms of failing a class, there is an opportunity to take summer school, but typically you can only take 2 classes in summer school. So just make sure that that we're staying on top of our grades, and making sure that we're passing all our classes, so that way we can advance into the next year. And if you see that your child is short these credits, that usually means that either a class was dropped or a class was failed, and that's why they haven't advanced to the next grade. The counselors should have all we've been in touch with all the students, so everybody should be aware if your child is kind of behind or not on track. Next slide, please. All right, so for typical 11th grade schedule, so that's what you guys are going to be planning for next year. It's a full schedule. We would have English 3, or we have a bunch of different honors electives. The the curriculum and the program of studies really opens up for English in your 11th grade year. You can pick a number of different honors English electives. It's really important when it comes time to schedule that you go through and look at every single one of the classes and, you know, kind of read exactly what those classes are about. Because, you know, those are all honors classes. And if you select something that is not, you know, maybe of interest or that doesn't really work, it's going to be a little bit harder to switch out of that because there's nowhere to switch into. So just, you know, go through, and when it comes time to actually make the selection, have one or two, have a couple of choices in mind, so that way we can make sure that the classes that your child gets put into are classes that they actually want. In terms of math, it all depends on what you started at. Some students are in Algebra 2 honors or academic. Some students are in pre-calculus. Some students are going into calc or AP calc, right? It all kind of depends on which level you started at. Typically, our juniors are all taking chemistry and US history too. And then it should be around your third year of a language if you've started with the same language. If you started with a language, some students will take a language and decide that's not the language for me and switch, but it should be around the third year. Again, just pay attention because most colleges are looking for at least 2 years. And when we say 2 years of a language, we're saying 2 years of the same language, not, you know, French and Spanish. We want French 1 and French 2. All right. Every year, every student has to take gym and health. So for 11th grade, it actually says health 12 up there, but it would actually be health 11. And then, you know, the last slot for your schedule would be an elective. So, you know, we would definitely make sure you're paying attention to whether the class is a practical art or a fine art. It's 21st century life and careers or a visual and performing arts. You know, our students that take band every year, that's automatically considered a visual and performing art, or students that take chorus, those are visual and performing arts. So by the time they graduate, they're going to have to at some point take a 21st century life and careers. Again, all these classes are listed in our program of studies, so make sure you're taking a look at it to properly plan ahead. Next slide, please. All right, so when you're looking at your transcript, basically this is what you're trying to make look the best, right? You know, you want to make sure that you're doing well every year and staying on top of the grades. Now, this transcript is excellent. You see straight A's, but that's not all. That's not going to be the case for every single student. What we generally, my general rule of thumb is when you're planning your classes, you know, you want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to get the best grades in the highest level classes you can, but you don't want to overwork yourself. You want to pay attention to your mental health. You want to pay attention to how much work you're taking home and how much free time you're actually having outside of school. Some students are built to be able to go to class and go home and study and do all those things, but most students aren't, right? So parents and students often ask, like, what kind of classes should I take? Should I take honors classes? Should I be in AP classes? And my answer usually is, you know, it kind of depends on every single person. Every single person is going to be a little bit different. It's not necessarily it might not match up to what your friends group is in. You know, but one thing to kind of try, what I general rule of thumb is, you know, try some honors classes in subjects that you enjoy and subjects that you like, and then every year try to do a little bit better, right? Because when it comes down to college admissions, what they're really doing is they're developing a narrative based off of your transcript. So they want to see, you know, you increase the rigor just a little bit and increase your grades every year to put you in the best position. If that doesn't happen, there are other ways that we can definitely, you know, let's say sophomore year something happened and it wasn't the best situation. You know, we can definitely explain those things away and talk about it, but you still want to make sure you're putting your best effort out there. Next slide, please. All right, so GPA. So GPA is a very complicated system. It's, you know, but basically every grade you get is assigned a point level, and then you take the average of all those points and figure out exactly what the GPA is. So let's say you take a 5-credit, English course, and you average that with another 5-credit class. You get 2 A's, it would come out to a 4.33 unweighted, right? It's a complicated math formula, and it kind of just tells you how well you're doing. But if we kind of go back to what I was talking about on the last slide, if you're putting your best foot forward and making your best effort, you're gonna have a good GPA. I always tell my students, don't focus so much on what the GPA is. Focus on, making sure you're putting your best effort. Because GPA is really used to compare like students and rank students, and that's never anything that's good for our students' mental health. So I always tell my students, kind of stay away from the GPA. Like obviously you want to do well, and you should pay attention to it a little bit, but don't focus on it so much where if like you see your friend has a 4.1 and you're at a 3.9 and now you're really upset. That doesn't really mean too much. And what we don't really tell students until their senior year is that colleges, they take your grades and they plug them into their own little algorithm and formula, and they change your GPA make it completely different to what we have. So like I said, don't focus so much on what the GPA is, more focus on putting your best foot forward. Next slide, please. All right, so planning ahead, GPA. So GPA is only updated at the end of each final. GPA is updated at the end of each school year, and it's based on final grades only. So if let's say your child gets a bad grade on a single assignment, that's not something that's going to fluctuate your GPA. Even quarter grades, those aren't going to fluctuate the GPA. It's only the final grades, the average of all the quarters together, that change GPA. So, after every quarter, your GPA isn't going to really change much. So one question it asks is, what counts more for colleges, weighted or unweighted? And the answer is really neither, because they're going to they're going to recalculate all that anyways. Now, what I generally say though, again, is, try your best and try to challenge yourself, try your best in your classes. And then if you put your best foot forward, you kind of lay your cards on the table and see what happens. Next slide, please. All right, you're more than your GPA. That's kind of exactly what I was trying to illustrate. Next slide. All right, so some of the things that in terms of planning ahead, these are some decisions that you're going to have to make, typically around now and moving forward. Course selection, right? Make sure you're looking at the program of studies, going through and understanding, okay, maybe I want to take a certain amount of AP class or AP classes. How do I make that happen? You have to plan that and make sure you're kind of penciling in and paying attention to the prerequisites. So generally speaking, for colleges, what we say is you should be able to get to calculus for math. If you started out in high school at algebra, it's not possible to get to calculus without doing math advancement. So math advancement would be taking the next level math class over the summer, so that way you can jump. So for instance, if you took algebra your freshman year, and you take math advancement, so that would be you would do geometry over the summer, and then your sophomore year you would be in algebra 2, and then pre-calc, and then calculus your senior year, which colleges want to see. So we really encourage students that are, that if they're not able to hit calculus by the time they graduate, to try to do math advancement to kind of catch up. BOTEC, right? BOTEC is typically, for most programs, it's a 2-year program, so you would want to start paying attention to that now. If let's say your child, you feel like your child needs some more a hands-on environment, and they want to get some more skills and go into a trade, talk to your counselor now, so we can kind of prepare and get them set up for a visit at our VOTEC, and we can make that happen. Because once they become a junior, it's kind of hard to only get them into VOTEC during their senior year, because it's usually a two-year program. Option 2, that is that is something that's new again this year. So that is where students are able to opt out of PE for 1 quarter or 2 quarters due to a sport. They can't opt out for 2 quarters for the same sport. So let's say you play basketball, you can't opt out of quarter 2 and quarter 3. But if you played 2 different sports, you could opt out of 2 different quarters. You also cannot opt out of your health or your driver's ed. So driver's ed is this year, which has already passed. So if your child plays a sport and coming up in quarter 2 or 3 or 4, and you would like to get a study hall instead of PE, you could fill out the option 2 paperwork. And then last is Money Skills. Money Skills is an online class that we use to account for personal finance. The students love it because they can take it online at their own pace. And if you wanted to sign up, you could let your counselor know, and we can give you the information to sign up. It's something that's done through our STEM department and our supervisor, Mr. Misbahudin. Sorry, I drew a blank there for a second. Next slide. All right, so one of my favorite things to do is talk to students about colleges and SCOIR. That's like what I'm passionate about. That's kind of why I got into this field. And I personally love SCOIR. SCOIR is the program that you're going to use to search for colleges and to kind of figure out like what's the next step in after high school. So one thing that you could do is you go onto SCOIR, and the page you're seeing here is it's where you search. If you kind of look, you can see like must have, nice to have, no thanks. Those are different preferences that you want in your school. You can play around with that. You can also reach out to your counselors to get tons of more information. I'm not going to get into too much detail about that because we will have junior meetings. We'll also have senior meetings to kind of explain that. But sophomore year, you can kind of go on and play around and look up colleges that maybe are local or maybe not so local. To get an idea of the tuition, the acceptance rate, all the stats, the demographics. Sometimes you can even click and see get a virtual tour from SCOIR. One of the biggest tools that we use in SCOIR though is the scattergrams that you're looking at right now. The scattergrams are super important because it's comparing you to all the other students that have applied to that school from Columbia High School. You would be the star, and all the other data points would let you know, hey, is this school a reach, is this school a level school, or is this school a target school? Ideally you would want to have 2 reaches in your senior year, but again, we'll talk about that come senior year. It's more right now to explore and start to think about like, hey, especially if you're the first person to ever go to college, to think about like, where do I see myself? Like, what's financially affordable for me? Start thinking about those things. And then junior year, we'll ramp it up a little bit more. And then senior year, we'll ramp it up a ton, and we'll make sure that you're applying and, getting those applications out there. Next slide, please. So the last slide is like all that really matters: social connection, self-care, mental health. Like obviously we're a school, so we're passionate about academics and doing well and getting good grades and planning you for the next steps. But you can't do any of that if you're not taking care of yourself, right? And the ways to do that is, try to build a social network, find some friends, make sure your children are finding friends, and if they're struggling, like counselors are people that could help out with that. We have lists of clubs, we have ideas. We can help in that area, right? Self-care is huge. You can't focus on class if you're not taking care of yourself, if you have so many other worries to worry about. So one thing that I always say is come down and talk to us. We're all friendly people in the department. We're all passionate about our job. We all got into this job because we really, really love kids. So just come down and talk to us, and we'll help you through through whatever it is in your life. And we'll try to make sure we make these next 3 years, because you're already past your freshman year. Make sure these 3 years go by very smoothly. Next slide, please. All right, so what now? So the big things that we say are monitor your child's mental health. Like make sure you're paying attention to them. Make sure they're hanging out with people and making friends. They're not just like clammed up in a room and not talking to anybody. And when you notice things that are off, it's okay to let us know. And we can reach out to them. We can be a voice to help you. And sometimes that actually helps because they don't want to hear mom and dad nagging on them all day long. So just reach out to us. The other thing is check in with us, have your child check in with us. It says weekly here. It doesn't have to necessarily be weekly, but whenever you need something, don't be afraid to reach out to us. When you're talking to your child, just remember that what they're going through is valid, and just make sure you're validating what they're saying, making sure that they understand that you were in their situation once, but you're not in that situation now. So like, just make sure you're hearing what they say. Tapping into their interests, figure out what they want to do. Their interest from when they were in 5th, 6th, 7th grade might be completely different than now. So talk to them and try to figure out like what they want to do, so that way we can help prepare them for the next steps. And we have road trip on here because you can start going to visit colleges and going to see different areas and prepare. And there's a bunch of colleges within 20 miles that you can just go and walk on campus. Seton Hall's across the street. So go see some of these colleges and start preparing. Next slide. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Williams and Mr. Gardner. So we are taking questions in the chat now, if you want to type any questions into there. And just, I think a bunch of people had signed on after the fact, so I just want to re-announce Principal Sanchez's fun announcement in the beginning that the PSAT will be offered to 10th graders in the spring. So in case you didn't hear that. And so we're all here to answer your questions about anything at all about CHS.
I was just going to add that I think the process for option 2, just to explain that this year we kind of put sophomores and prioritize them to have driver's ed first marking period. And this is what we will be doing moving forward. It's really a great idea, so that this way some students would have had driver's ed 10th, fourth marking period, and after they were 16, and that would mean that you would probably have to pay out of pocket to have your child tutored or take the test elsewhere, right? So this helps in that way, but also helps in knowing that moving forward, if your child plays soccer, volleyball, or some football, something in the fall, that means junior and senior year, your child will definitely have option 2 for that time period. So your child did lose it this year, but that we're now with our new system, it's guaranteed that would only happen once in a 4-year experience. Because moving forward, all juniors will have health second marking period. I'm sorry, seniors second marking period, juniors third marking period, and freshmen fourth marking
Okay, I have a parent asking for the slide with the class options. Let me try to figure out which slide you're asking for. Maybe this one? That might be it. And the schedule request process, the course request process usually starts in the winter. So in January, right after the new year, is when we'll be putting out our updated program of studies and all of the instructions and specific timeline about what's about to happen with students making course requests. So you'll have plenty of time to think about it, look at the program of studies with your student, talk to people, and then your student will end up having a meeting with the counselor probably in March to actually enter their course request or check on their course request with the counselor, review them together if they've already submitted them on their own. So that's kind of the little timeline there. And then the students get a draft schedule early in the summer.
I saw one question about SCOIR, and that those scattergrams are where your student fits against other Columbia students that have applied to that specific college, not the entire applicant pool, just the Columbia students that have applied there.
Okay, if a student takes 4 years of a language, do they not have to take one in college? So the way that works is there's two different potential ways that your student wouldn't have to take a language in college. Well, three ways. The first is that they just go to a program where there's no world language requirement at the college. The second way is if they took an AP world language course year, senior year, and scored a 4 or 5 on the AP exam at the end of the year, and then their college accepted that as credit. And the third way would be that a lot of colleges have students take a world language placement test when they first get to college or during their orientation weekend, and they could potentially place out of it that way. So we don't offer PSAT tutoring. There are SAT and ACT prep courses offered through the adult school, which I think happen at the high school after hours or on the weekends, but not necessarily PSAT tutoring. There are tons of prep books, and we recommend Khan Academy, and I think the English teachers are going to be handing out those practice booklets ahead of time. And of course, we have math tutoring and we have English tutoring, so taking advantage of that would be very helpful when it comes to the PSAT. All right, applying for VOTEC, that's going to happen. Usually the deadline's February, right, Mr. Williams?
Yes, so the deadline's February, usually in sometime in November, they'll start opening up for visits to go, like they'll have their visit night where you go and you see the programs and see the site. And then the application opens and the deadline is February. I think you can apply once starting in November once those visits happen. But there should be some information coming out shortly, usually around October, November.
Yeah. And more about, I think, people asking what VOTEC is. So we have the send-in relationship with Union County VOTEC. It's like an amazing facility there. They have really cool programs, like they have culinary, cosmetology, electric. Yeah, automotive. It's really impressive there if you do go for an open house or a tour there. And so we have this relationship with them that if our students apply and get accepted, they can go for half the day to VOTEC their junior and senior year. So we would provide busing, and they would spend either the morning or the afternoon at CHS and the other down at VOTEC, which is in Scotch Plains. That's where the campus is. And we would bus them, to and from CHS. And they do earn, credits that are transferable to CHS while they're there, so it doesn't interfere with their graduation. And they're learning a trade essentially while they're there. They can earn certificates in certain trades while they're there and earning their high school diploma. It's pretty cool. Our students love it. Okay, so questions about like accessing the counselor. This is a really good question. So what's happening right now is that the counselors are back to back with senior college meetings, which will be your kids in a couple of years. So they're not scheduling meetings with any underclassmen right now. Of course, they're available. So anybody can request a meeting at all through the website. You could just go to the Meet the Team page on our website and you can click on the counselor's calendar and request an appointment with them right on there. You can email them for an appointment. But once we wrap up the college planning meetings, we do have a plan to see the sophomores in November and to check in with them and everything like that. But that doesn't mean that, we can't see them now. So definitely just shout out to your counselor and let them know. And if your student is a little unsure about that, why don't you just let the counselor know and ask them if they don't mind just calling down your student and having that chat. They'd be happy to. When to sign up for Money Skill. So right now we're doing fall Money Skill. So you would be signing up for spring Money Skill, and the letter for that would be coming out in January, the registration letter for that. And then your student would have the semester, like until May or June to finish that.
I see a question here that says, do students ever do VOTEC and then continue to college? Yes, they can do VOTEC and continue to college. VOTEC, I know like in previous generations and previous years, VOTEC was considered, the option if you weren't going to college. But that's not the case anymore. You could finish VOTEC, get your high school diploma, and then absolutely apply to college and go to college and graduate with a bachelor's degree or in whatever field. You could also still continue in that trade, but it's not just limited to students that, you know, that don't want to go to college. There's also a question here that says, no, Mr. Sanchez answered it. Online money skills, is it necessary if a student took personal finance? No, you would only take personal finance. If you take personal finance in person, there's no need to take money skills. Typically, students would take money skills if they're looking to free up an extra slot in their schedule, and instead of having to take personal finance in their schedule, they can put something else in there. So you can definitely do that.
I think there are some questions about internships here. So we do always have students asking about this. It's kind of tricky to get an actual internship when you're in high school because of labor laws. Companies would either need to pay you or give you college credit. So there's no way to get college credit in high school. So in terms of an actual internship, our students typically don't do that, but they do look for jobs and volunteer opportunities throughout the community. And we encourage them to do that. We talk to them about what their interests are, try to give them ideas and things like that. We are working on a couple of things this year with some of community members and alumni who have like volunteered to almost be career mentor type people. So you can stay tuned for some of that programming that's going to be coming. So we're hoping to really beef up our programming there when it comes to that. But if your student is interested in securing something for the summer, they should definitely talk to their counselor about ideas and kind of how to initiate that. And we're happy to help. All right, Mr. Gardner, do you want to take this one? How do colleges generally look upon having a job versus being in clubs?
Sure. You know, when you're applying to schools, they're looking at your entire application package. So, you know, whether you have a job that's 25 to 30 hours a week, or you're in a club that's 25 to 30 hours a week, which I can't imagine there's a lot of clubs that are. They're seeing the dedication that you're putting towards something, whether it's a club or a job. You know, so I think, you know, it's not a concrete answer, but if you are putting that much effort into something outside of school and you're still maintaining, you know, a good academic record, they're going to see that as you're someone that has the organizational skills, the time management, as well as the drive to succeed on a college campus when you're on your own and you're not, you know, kind of being overseen by a parent. So they'll see that dedication and appreciate that, and it'll add to your application package for sure.
Yeah, when students end up applying to college, they have to list their activities on the application and they have to indicate for each activity an estimate of how many hours per week and weeks per year they spent doing the activity. And then when it comes through to the college, the admission counselor sees it as this like cool grid. So they're able to really quickly see that you were pretty busy. And so obviously if you're playing a sport, if you're like a 3-season athlete, they're going to easily see that you didn't have time to do anything else, that you couldn't be in a club because you were playing the sport. So there is like a great way to be able to report all this in a way that makes sense and kind of shows what you've been up to. All right, Principal Sanchez, do you want to take this most recent question down here? It's about clubs. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was just typing in the answer. So I think we have both advisors for those clubs. But if there's additional issues, perhaps, just please email Mr. Mullen. I did spell it out there because it's with an E-N. And if they reach out to Mr. Mullen, who is our athletic director, he'll be able to come up with a solution. Those clubs, I'm just not sure why there would be fundraising issues for them, but I might not know why. But I know both advisors, so I'm just curious.
All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes, see if anyone has any other questions. We hope your students so far are having a good sophomore year, happy to be back in the building. We certainly are happy to be back in the building with them and being able to see them. So it's been really great and really fun for us. Of course, we don't have all the homework that they do, but we just hope that it's feeling a little bit more normal and they're like excited to be part of Columbia, getting involved and, you know, figuring out who they are as a high school student, trial and erroring different study habits and different routines. That's a big thing we always do, talking about the students' after school routines and thinking, oh, why don't you try something new if this one's not working? So we do encourage kind of assessing that often. Okay, another popular question has popped up. Do we think high schools are taking COVID into their personal narratives? Okay, I'm not totally sure I understand that question. Oh, yes, okay, college. Yeah, so this is definitely our big question that we're getting right now from seniors who are in the middle of the application process. Everyone's a little bit worried about you know, how last year is going to look on the transcript and how that's going to follow their student. And obviously, everybody really in the entire world was dealing with the same thing last year. So the colleges are absolutely aware. I'm sure the person who ends up reading the application will have had their own story about what they had to deal with, you know, last year and moving forward. So, of course, they're taking it into consideration. We do explain what our situation was here at CHS on our school profile, which all of the colleges receive. The colleges give you a space on the application to tell your story about what happened to you during COVID, if you had any impacts on you or on your schooling. So they give you an extra essay space, essentially, if you want to write something there. And I'm sure that question will remain for the next few years as all the students who went through that are applying for college. So there's plenty of places to provide any kind of explanation that you may need to.
And in our personal narrative, we did emphasize that you know, extracurricular activities obviously were curtailed for our students during that year. So it may not have impacted your child more than freshman year, but for some of our seniors, you know, they had probably a year and a half, 2 years of not having as many leadership opportunities as they may have liked. So that is there, but at the same time, right? I think you know, as Ms. Ballison said, many of our students had to deal with that issue. So there's a great place for the individual story to be there, as well as the school's story being in the narrative. Oh, and just one more thing I was just going to add. Um, this is new this year, is that we start our Start Strong test, which are very short NJSLA type tests or PARC type tests. So, for example, usually for the English exam, it might be over 2 days or 3 days. There'll be readings and essay writing. Well, for Start Strong, it's actually just going to be a reading and some multiple choice questions. All of these Start Strong tests are really to kind of find out, and the data is going to go right to the teachers within, the state says, within a month, the results. So that's why there's no essay writing, right? It's all multiple choice. This way, it's to understand what type of gaps students may have across the state of New Jersey from COVID, from the pandemic. So that's why I think it's really important to take these tests and to take them seriously. We'll be explaining that to the students tomorrow. Tomorrow we start the English language, English test, and then math is on Friday, and those are for students that are in algebra, geometry, or algebra 2. If your child is in a different math class, then they will not have to take the test. And I believe Monday is the science test, and that's only for seniors.
Thank you for explaining that to me because I was still confused. Okay. So we just wanted to remind everyone again that your student school counselor is kind of like your person at the high school. So whether it's you or your student, anytime at all, they can reach out to their counselor. You can reach out to the counselor. If you don't know who to go to, you don't know what to do for something, they'll be able to direct you, to loop in the right person, whatever it is, refer you to other services. So just don't forget that you have that person here at the high school. And this is what we love doing. This is all why we became school counselors, is to kind of be here and help make a student's experience better in high school during this really exciting and interesting time in their lives. So again, I want to thank Principal Sanchez, Mr. Gardner, and Mr. Williams for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Appreciate you so much. And thanks everyone for logging on. We will send out the link for this once it's available, probably early next week. So thank you to everybody and good night.
Yes.
Thank
10th
you.
graders come at what is it? 7:55 tomorrow. Just want to make sure. And thank you all for helping us out. Great job, guys. And Miss Balisone.
Thank you.
All right.